Yo, what is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Okay, so today I want to talk about something really special because every now and then a game comes along that isn't just a good game, it's an experience.
Citizens of Pywell. Today, a new chapter in this land's history shall be written by our own hand.
We fight those who wield power to prey on weak. Beasts who think themselves men.
Kicking things off, Crimson Desert, and this open world epic sold 5 million copies for a very good reason. Set in the vast fantasy continent of Pywell, filled with rival factions, ancient magic, terrifying monsters, and mechanical dragons, you play as Cliff, a battle-hardened mercenary fighting through a world torn apart by war, betrayal, and supernatural forces that no army can easily stop. The physics-driven combat is dynamic and incredibly satisfying. Brutal sword combos, horseback battles, elemental abilities, and spectacular large-scale boss fights, with a living world that remembers your choices and shifts politically based on who you align with across the story. The game runs at native 4K with ray-traced lighting at 60 frames per second on PS5 Pro, one of the most visually spectacular open-world games on any console. And Pearl Abyss has committed to regular post-launch patches, improving and expanding the game continuously. Players describe Crimson Desert as impossible to put down, with multiple people intentionally stopping early to save content for upcoming DLC rather than burning through it too fast. The world has activities for every type of player: fishing, mining, crafting, cooking, and exploring alongside the main story combat, creating a richly layered open world experience.
The shelter. Looks like we got some backup power here.
Now maybe we can upgrade our stuff.
Worth a shot.
Next, Pragmata and Capcom has done something completely fresh and genuinely special here. You play as Hugh, an astronaut stranded in a collapsing lunar research station, alongside Diana, a synthetic android companion who appears as a young girl with extraordinary intelligence, and together they must fight through rogue AI forces and find a way back to Earth. The core gameplay mechanic is brilliant. Diana hacks enemies to expose weaknesses and disable their systems, while Hugh exploits those vulnerabilities with a variety of weapons, creating a constantly evolving strategic combat loop that escalates in creativity and challenge throughout the campaign. The emotional relationship between Hugh and Diana, a hardened soldier and an innocent android, forms the heartbeat of the game and delivers some of the most moving character moments in any game this year. GameSpot described it as an excellent shooter built around the idea of hacking your opponents to weaken them before delivering a killing blow, balancing strategic depth with a heartfelt story. Then, Death Stranding 2 on the beach. And this is Hideo Kojima's most stunning and emotionally powerful creation. You play as Sam Bridges, Norman Reedus from The Walking Dead, on a new journey across post-apocalyptic Australia, reconnecting isolated human survivors while a new terrifying threat emerges from the beach, the mysterious dimension between life and death that connects all living things. The gameplay is dramatically improved over the original. Combat is faster and more satisfying. Zip lines now curve around obstacles. Traversal tools are more creative, and the whole delivery-focused experience flows more naturally while keeping the meditative philosophy that makes Kojima's vision so unique. One journalist played Death Stranding 2 for 50 hours and confidently called it the best-looking game ever made on any platform, with the Decima engine pushing the PS5 to its absolute limits in every single environment. The online strand system returns beautifully. Structures you build appear in other players' worlds, creating an invisible cooperative network where strangers across the globe silently help each other through a broken world.
Most delicacy. I need all my pieces on the board.
009 is a master manipulator. Whatever the endgame is, we won't see it coming.
Jet lag gets me every time.
007 First Light and the greatest James Bond game ever made finally arrived in May 2026, made by IO Interactive, the studio behind the legendary Hitman trilogy. First Light follows a young Bond before he earns his 007 designation, tracing the dangerous missions that transform him from a talented agent into the world's most legendary spy. The Hitman DNA runs through every level, multiple creative approaches to every mission, gadgets including smoke devices and a high-tech watch scanner, a climbing system for navigating buildings silently. And the game adds bigger cinematic set pieces, driving sequences, and explosive story moments that feel genuinely Bond. Players on Push Square described it as a mix of Hitman and Uncharted with a little bit of Max Payne 3, and one reviewer spent 20 hours on the game and was still playing the extra tech sim missions because they didn't want it to end. 007 First Light was crowned May 2026 Game of the Month by Push Square readers, beating both Lego Batman and Mixtape, and sits among the top 2 or 3 GOTY contenders in most player polls so far this year.
Hello?
It hasn't been easy. But after much effort, here we finally are.
Who are you?
I know now that you're the one that I've been searching for. The special one. The chosen one. Miss Ashcroft.
Next, Resident Evil Requiem, the #1 best PS5 game of 2026, so far according to fans and critics alike. It features 2 playable protagonists, Grace Ashcroft, a brilliant new FBI analyst investigating a mysterious series of deaths, and fan favorite Leon S. Kennedy, returning for another terrifying nightmare mission that brings both characters back to the iconic Raccoon City Police Department decades after RE2. Resident Evil Requiem is the best of the franchise's 2 distinct eras, as it expertly juggles the sweat-inducing terror of its survival horror past with the tight power fantasy of the later survival action games. Grotesquely gorgeous to look at and full of moments that put a new spin on the bioterror of the franchise. You can switch freely between first-person and third-person perspectives at any time, giving players complete control over how they experience the horror, and the dynamic enemy routing system changes patrol patterns based on your actions, making every playthrough feel different. Then, Nioh 3 and Team Ninja has delivered what many are calling their absolute greatest game to date. Nioh 3 doesn't stray from Team Ninja's established formula, but adds compelling new additions and refinements that sharpen the experience. With the introduction of open field design that adds more exploration and discovery to the mix, quality of life enhancements, and rock solid combat, Nioh 3 is the best game in the series to date. The stance system returns in full depth, low, mid, and high, each with completely different movesets for every weapon type, rewarding players who master switching between stances mid-combat to counter specific enemy behaviors and create devastating custom combo chains. The key pulse mechanic rewards perfectly timed button presses after attacks to instantly restore stamina, creating a rhythm-based combat flow unlike anything else in the genre, and the new open-world regions give you far more freedom to explore between the tightly crafted combat arenas. NSF Tech called it Team Ninja at its absolute best, a game that feels both familiar and genuinely ambitious, with few games in 2026 that match it for sheer depth and combat satisfaction.
Didn't we always promise each other that we would be together forever?
Next, Fatal Frame 2, Crimson Butterfly Remake. And this is one of the scariest and most unique games you will ever play, based on the beloved 2003 PS2 survival horror classic. The remake modernizes the legendary ghost photography game with completely rebuilt visuals while faithfully preserving the camera obscura gameplay system that made the original so terrifyingly original and unlike anything else. You play as twin sisters Nioh and Mayu who wander into a cursed village filled with vengeful spirits, and your only weapon against these terrifying ghosts is a supernatural camera called the camera obscura, photographing spirits to damage and defeat them in increasingly heart-pounding encounters. The PS5 version utilizes DualSense haptic feedback to enhance the tension of photographing ghosts, meaning you physically feel the supernatural energy through the controller as you raise your camera toward a spirit bearing down on you in the dark. The horror comes from a complete reversal of gaming instincts. Instead of running from ghosts, you have to let them come dangerously close before photographing them, creating some of the most uniquely terrifying moments in any horror game. Then, Clair Obscur Expedition 33, the Game of the Year 2025 winner, and one of the greatest RPGs ever made. Set in a painterly fantasy world inspired by Belle Epoque France, where a mysterious immortal called the Paintress appears each year and paints a number, and everyone that age simply ceases to exist. You lead Expedition 33 on a desperate mission to cross a surreal continent and destroy her before she paints the number 33 and kills your entire generation. The combat is a brilliant fusion of turn-based and real-time mechanics. You can dodge attacks during enemy turns in real time, parry projectiles with precise timing, and unleash devastating counterattacks, a system that constantly rewards skill and attention throughout every single fight. It sold 8 million copies as of April 2026 and won 9 awards at the Game Awards 2025 from 13 nominations, including Game of the Year, the most awards of any game that ceremony by a wide margin. The story is emotionally devastating in the most beautiful way. Themes of loss, hope, sacrifice, and human resilience woven into a world that feels like a living watercolor painting brought to life. Next, Esoteric Ebb, and this is the most brilliantly weird and wildly creative RPG of 2026. Esoteric Ebb is an isometric fantasy RPG inspired by dice rolling tabletop RPGs, specifically D&D, as well as recent CRPGs like Disco Elysium, where you play as the world's worst cleric employed by the government in a bizarre fantasy metropolis where combat is completed through dialogue, including with yourself. Making mistakes is unavoidable, exploration is encouraged, and you can reshape reality to your advantage. Every situation, from confronting enemies to navigating social encounters to exploring the city's many bizarre secrets, is resolved through sweat-inducing die rolls that create genuinely unpredictable and hilarious outcomes every single session. Metacritic called it weird, witty, and unpredictable, striking critics as the best Disco Elysium-inspired RPG yet, with one reviewer saying, "I cannot say enough good things about Esoteric Ebb. Like a good mimic, it's got teeth." The fantasy metropolis setting is bursting with bizarre characters, unexpected plot twists, and layers of hidden lore that reward every player who digs deeper into its wonderfully strange world. Currently available on PC, with a PS5 version expected, Esoteric Ebb is the kind of game that gaming communities talk about for years after discovering it. Then, Subnautica 2. And the scariest ocean in gaming just got a brand new terrifying chapter. It's the sequel to the legendary underwater survival game Subnautica, set on a brand new alien ocean world where you crash land on a planet covered almost entirely by a vast, deep, utterly terrifying alien sea filled with incredible ecosystems, stunning bioluminescent environments, and creatures that range from beautiful to absolutely horrifying. Subnautica 2 adds cooperative multiplayer while expanding the biome variety and vehicle options. meaning you can now explore the depths alone in the trademark atmospheric solo experience, or dive in with friends and experience the terror together for the very first time in the series. The survival loop combines gathering resources, building underwater bases, crafting vehicles to reach deeper zones, and uncovering the alien planet's mysteries, all while managing oxygen, food, water, and the very real threat of creatures lurking in the pitch-black abyss below you. Next, Cairn. And this is the most immersive and meditative challenge game of the entire year. You play as a climber whose singular goal is to become the first person to summit the fearsome Mount Kami, ascending a series of sheer, brutal cliff faces by carefully plotting every single individual hand and foot movement across one of the most physically demanding and realistic climbing simulations ever created. The limb-based control system means you manage each of your hands and feet separately, choosing exactly where to grip, how to position your weight, and when to rest, making every meter gained feel genuinely hard-won and every slip feel heart-stopping. Cairn is a brutally demanding, yet strangely soothing climbing experience that turns every movement into a meaningful decision. Its unique limb-based controls and meditative pacing create a powerful sense of immersion, even as its punishing difficulty and sparse checkpoints test your patience. You also manage real survival resources as you climb: food, water, pythons, finger tape, making every decision about when to eat, when to rest, and when to push forward genuinely consequential throughout the entire ascent. Then, Mixtape. And this small, beautiful game is one of the most emotionally powerful experiences of 2026. Made by Beethoven and Dinosaur, the studio behind The Artful Escape, Mixtape is a narrative music adventure set in the 1990s following three teenage friends, Stacy, Van, and Cassandra, on their very last night of high school together before they go their separate ways into the adult world forever. The playlist draws the three friends into dreamlike reenactments of their most important memories, each one a carefully crafted vignette of teenage life, friendship, rebellion, and nostalgia, with fun mini-game set pieces including skateboarding through traffic, dodging cops in a shopping trolley, and exploring an abandoned dinosaur park at night. The soundtrack features real music from the Smashing Pumpkins, Joy Division, The Cure, and Iggy Pop. And Push Square called Mixtape an instant genre classic, a beautiful, endearing, and delightful deep dive into teenage angst and rebellion of the 1990s. It only costs $19.99, takes around 4.5 hours, and has made grown adults genuinely emotional, with players comparing it favorably to Journey, Life is Strange, and What Remains of Edith Finch 1. And this is the game that changed how the world thinks about video game storytelling. Set 20 years after a devastating fungal infection destroys civilization, you play as Joel, a hardened survivor still carrying the grief of everything he's lost, escorting Ellie, a teenage girl who may be immune to the infection, across the brutal, beautiful ruins of America to reach a group that might be able to create a cure. The journey across collapsed cities, abandoned suburbs, overgrown highways, and dangerous human settlements is harrowing, emotional, and deeply human, with Joel and Ellie's relationship forming one of gaming's most beloved and complex bonds, growing slowly and naturally across every moment of the campaign. The Part 1 rebuild was created from the ground up for PS5. Completely new character models, new lighting, new animations, new accessibility features, new AI behaviors, making it the definitive version of an already perfect game running at 4K 60 frames per second. And closing out this incredible list, Alan Wake 2, the most creatively ambitious single-player game on PS5. Two stories intertwine. FBI agent Saga Anderson investigates ritual murders in a creepy Pacific Northwest town, using her extraordinary mind-place ability to visualize clues and construct theories. While horror writer Alan Wake, trapped in a nightmare dimension called the Dark Place for 13 years, tries to rewrite reality using his own stories to escape and change the outcome. The game blends live-action film sequences with gameplay in a way that has never been attempted before, in any other game. Alan literally rewrites his own story in real time by changing plot points on a supernatural board that then alters the actual game world around him. The visuals are quite possibly the best ever achieved on PS5, ray tracing and lighting effects that look genuinely indistinguishable from real cinema, and Time magazine ranked Alan Wake 2 the #1 game of 2023. Remedy Entertainment's creative risk-taking is extraordinary throughout. Every chapter surprises with new mechanics, new formats, and new ways of playing that keep the experience constantly fresh from beginning to end.